9.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, it's Janine Young with Wammo on Kiwi.
It's Janine Young joining us from Melbourne City today. Hello to you, Janine.
Good morning.
Of course, our New Scientist correspondent. We are talking science, the latest, freshest new science news. And first up today, something about rejuvenating wasted muscle. They've created a bandage for this, Janine.
A genetic bandage, yeah. It's not like you have little machines that go in and wrap around the genes or anything like that. Although we have talked about little tiny medical machines before, this isn't quite it. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a disease that tends to affect boys. It's not really a girl's disease. It's quite a nasty one because it wastes away muscle. And generally, a lot of these boys die by the time they're 12. So they need a wheelchair by the time they're 12, and they're usually dead by the time they're about 30. Right. It's a horrible disease that just wastes away. So there's been a lot of effort put in to try and work out what's going on. The defective protein in muscle is called dystrophin, hence the whole dystrophin kind of thing. And years ago, they thought it was possible to replace the defective gene because this dystrophin isn't produced properly. And so they were looking at gene therapy and the like, except there was a bit of a blow when they realised that, in fact, the dystrophin gene is among the most complex in the human genome. It is big, it is unwieldy, it's too hard just to be able to fix and pop it back into the kids that are having problems with this. So what they've looked at now is using a bandage, a piece of RNA, because ribonucleic acid, as it is called, is a really important intermediary in genes being able to be transcribed or read, if you like, and converted into protein. So this little bandage is able to wrap around the gene, little sections of it, that mean that the dystrophin protein is produced properly because the bad sections, if you like, the defective bits are skipped over, and so dystrophin is produced properly. So when this bandage is introduced into either the blood or muscle of mice and humans, they've found that it's able to produce more dystrophin than it did before, and they're actually starting to see some positive results, and they're thinking that it's looking more now like a different type of muscular dystrophy where the men live well into their 60s instead of dying in their 30s.
Wow, imagine if this could be one of those conditions that that can be either minimised or eventually completely eradicated.
Well, you can only hope. It's a nasty disease, and I think a lot of, certainly when women are pregnant, they're very afraid that kids will have something like this because it has major impacts on a kid's life and impacts everybody else's, and it's really not a very pleasant disease. It's extremely painful, and, well, you don't want your child dying at 30, do you? It's just not a healthy thing. But this is a really positive kind of approach because it's minimally invasive, and if it does work, it means that you can produce this protein. You don't have to actually replace anything. You don't have potential problems of the virus that they're using to deliver the new gene, the one that's been improved, somehow going wrong. And they have had problems with gene therapy, with the virus causing cancers and the like, instead of actually just fixing the gene. So this looks like a relatively simple way to be able to fix the problem.
Well, on to our next story. The days of cars that driving themselves could be closer than we actually think, Janine.
Yeah, I get a bit freaked out by this one. Cars that drive themselves is what a lot of car makers are aiming for. People like VW and Volvo have been working for quite a long time to try and increase driver safety by looking at how they can get the driver to do less and less, because around 90% of crashes have driver involvement. Driver fatigue, driver being drunk, not paying attention, texting while you're driving, any number of reasons.
Let's face it. Human beings just don't make good drivers.
Very true. Yeah, basically. So they think the car might be able to do a better job. But it's not just the car. It's actually more about the wireless systems, the radar, the GPS, all the cameras that can be installed to try and do a better job of sensing what's going on the road than we do. And indeed, it appears this is actually happening. There is a system already in a particular, I think it's a Volvo, and I've seen it tested on a popular car program. Not sure if you have it in New Zealand, but Top Gear tested it quite a long time ago. The whole idea is to keep you a safe distance from the car in front of you. So they tested it coming up to a roundabout, and they actually had hands off the wheel, terrifying moment where they're kind of going, all right, is it going to stop?
Wow.
And it did. The car slowed down. It was actually sensing how far away the car in front was. And it said, well, too close, and it slowed that vehicle down. Extraordinary. But in time, what various companies and universities are thinking is that you could, in fact, perhaps have convoys of up to 8 cars, less than a metre apart, but it's all sensed by lasers and infrared and cameras, and there's a whole bunch of systems that will mean that, yes, they're very close, but they won't be in danger because they've been controlled by a lead car driven by a professional driver up the front. And it's wirelessly fed back to the cars behind to be able to convey how fast they should be going, when they should be braking, accelerating. They're basically driving the car for you. They're saying it'll basically be like being on a bus. You get to sit back, you can read, you can sleep, and as soon as you need to head off to the exit that you want, off you go. You just peel off and that's it.
Wow.
It's a mildly odd kind of thing, but in Japan they're already starting to do this because they have a system that they've invested millions of yen into, giving cars information about traffic conditions, the weather, traffic lights that are out ahead, traffic congestion and the like. This system is already running in Japan.
Yeah.
And I think in time they might be able to put a system onto highways. They're working on it at the moment. That you can get all the information you need, and you can actually start controlling your braking and acceleration when you get too close to cars in front of you.
Yeah.
So it's already starting to happen. Anti-lock braking, that started in 1971. That was the first attempt to override human behaviour in a car, because it can sense something more quickly than we can.
Yeah, and it does seem to make sense. Imagine if every car, say in a city, was intelligent and they all communicated as part of one big kind of brain and looked at the whole road network and everything on it was all plugged in, and other cars knew where other cars were, and there was a general intelligence going on. Because at the moment, when you think about it, if you're a helicopter going over the top of a motorway, it's chaos. There's nothing really. I mean, there's organised in that people are going on the left hand side of the road if you're in New Zealand or Australia, But other than that, there's no real sense to it.
Absolutely, and then you get some idiot that decides they want to go screaming up the right-hand lane just because they know they're going to have to push in just before the light. I think you have a particular intersection in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But you always have snarling traffic because people are doing stupid things because they get impatient.
Yeah.
The other benefit of a system like this is it's likely to reduce fuel consumption. If you have cars travelling fairly close together, you can actually reduce drag by up to 60%, and they're thinking that will bring down fuel use and carbon dioxide emissions by up to 40%. And that's a massive difference when you think about it.
Of course, I just wonder if we're going to see this technology in fossil fuel cars, or we're going to sort of wait until a new fuel comes along as well, and all this technology is sort of embedded in these sort of new sort of vehicles.
New vehicles are starting to come out with these sorts of technologies embedded as it is. There's a vehicle called the S60 that's coming out in May that's having another sort of these technologies embedded. So it's already starting to happen, and they are doing it in fuel cars. No doubt once you start having, renewable energy sources being fed into our cars and the like, it will be embedded. But there's issues around acceptance, because do you really want to be hurtling down the highway at 100k an hour knowing that you're not actually in control of the car? That's a little bit concerning for some people.
Absolutely. Well, that's a fascinating story, and you'll be able to find that story and the one talking about gene bandages as well in the New Scientist magazine coming out next week. Thank you very much, Janine.
You're welcome.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast. Catch that interview in video on demand at kiwifm.co.nz.